All right, so thanks for joining me. In today's video, we're going to take a look at 4 reasons why you should not use your debit card. So stay tuned. Okay, so you've probably seen a lot of financial gurus talking about not using credit cards, and instead you should be using debit cards. In theory, this all sounds fine and dandy, but in reality, when you look at the financial side of things, it doesn't make sense. Now, when is it that you should be using your debit card? So let's kind of get this across first. It's wise to use your debit card if you need to pull money out of an ATM machine. I think that's fantastic. It's also wise if you have trouble keeping up with your spending. For example, psychologically, you want to go ahead and say, hey, this is how much money I have in my bank account, so that's how much I can spend, and that's it. So you don't want to extend your credit. For example, people try to avoid using credit card. But there are a few reasons why really you should still not use your debit card, because if you're looking at saying, hey, I want to go ahead and use my debit card so I don't increase my spending, well, that doesn't necessarily work, which brings me to reason number 1. And the big reason is that it does not help the spending problem. And you might be wondering, well, why doesn't it help the spending problem? It's because you don't have anything still physical tied into cold, hard cash. If you're spending cash and you open up your wallet, you might have $20 in there. You know you have $20. Once you purchase something, you might have maybe $7 or $15 left. So you have less money. You see less money. When you're using a plastic card, you don't actually see that physical something. You don't see that physical, tangible anything in your wallet. So it actually makes it much more difficult to control your spending, just as a credit card would. However, you don't get the benefits that a credit card would. Now, yes, you can't spend more than a certain amount because your bank account may only have a certain limit. And yes, you could go ahead and open up a bank account that only has like $500 in it or $1,000, so that way you don't overspend every month. But that gets really tedious. Instead, the bigger picture, of course, would be to go ahead and change your habits, but that is much more difficult. So I could see why the approach is to go ahead and use the debit card, even though there's a lot of other disadvantages to it. So let's take a look at number 2 here and what the big issue is, and that is that there's no protection. If you go ahead and use your debit card, you basically don't have any protection. And in fact, when you go and use a credit card, it is the credit card merchant. So for example, when we're dealing with business or selling products and courses, all the transactions go through the merchant, and then eventually I get my money. But as a business owner, it takes time for me to get my money. So you, as a user of a credit card, you're not really paying the business directly. You're paying the merchant who pays the business. So there's an extra layer of protection, which means by the time anybody gets their money, there's a little bit of delay. So that way, if you call in and you have an issue, hey, dispute a payment, you have much longer to do that with a credit card. With a debit card, you basically have 2 business days, I believe, according to the current laws, to dispute anything $50 or more. And if you go ahead and I think if you go up to 30 or 60 days, then it can be up to $500. So anyways, double check that. I'm not 100% sure because the laws do change from time to time. But basically, there is a limit. With credit cards, when you go into it, there's about 6 months that you could go ahead and dispute those charges, and they can bring back those funds into the card. So there's much more protection when it comes to using your credit card. You can say it's lost and stolen. If it's lost and stolen and you're not really liable, they will walk you through the payments, and you'll get your money back because they haven't really paid out all that money, and they can track it a little bit better. So anyways, it's much, much better. Okay, let's take a look at reason number 3. There's no rewards. So if I go ahead and use my debit card, I don't get any money back. Now, if I go in with a credit card, you might have 1% cash back. You may get rewards, travel rewards. You may get free goodies or gifts, even if you pay off the full credit card each month. So let's say you're spending like $10,000 a year, you might get, a couple $100 in bonuses depending on the credit card. You might get a free, who knows, a free restaurant gift certificate or something like that. But the point is that you get some money back. So just by using it, you get money back or you get some rewards. Now, credit card companies know that most people have credit card debt and they look at the rewards, what they're paying out versus other people paying, that yeah, it makes sense for them to do this because they're making it up on the percentages anyway. In your case, you have to understand that, hey, I better pay off my card every single month. And in that case, you could use it smart and effectively and get kind of rewards, a kickback. So if you're spending, let's say $1,000, hey, maybe 20 or 40 bucks you kind of get back every year, and that just kind of saves you a little bit of money. So that's kind of another cool benefit to using credit cards beyond just debit cards, because with debit cards there are really no rewards. Okay, and last one here I'm going to say is that big reason number 4 is cash is held hostage. So if you look at this from a standpoint of going into travel, like a travel hotel, if you go in and you put a card on for incidentals, right? For a credit card, what they do is they just take the credit card and they hold the credit card, but no cash is held for kind of, let's say, in jail. They're not holding your cash. If you go ahead and use a debit card, what they might do is they might put a $500 or $1,000 actual, they'll take it out and then they'll put it back if you don't use it, but your cash is actually held hostage. So your money is actually more tied up, and if you don't have that kind of money, then it could be a problem, right? Because now you're depleting your money, you're holding it, and then it has to come back. So you need to understand that cash is held hostage when you're using a debit card, versus with a credit card, they just go ahead, take a card, the card's on file, and then when the card's on file, well, in that case, you're pretty much good to go to use the hotel room. You're not worried about it, but you don't really have to pay anything because they're just holding it in case of incidentals. So those are a couple of the big reasons as far as when to go ahead and maybe use your debit card, or really when not to use your debit card, because if you really look at it, using a debit card really for ATM withdrawals is probably the number one thing, or even verifying your identity maybe at a bank. That's kind of when you would use it. Beyond that, be very careful using your debit card because you don't get that protection. Your money's held hostage. There's a lot of issues there when it comes to using your debit card, and you don't really get rewards either. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful, insightful, and gives you a little bit of something to think about. I know that a lot of people use their debit card to kind of slow down their spending because they think it'll help them, but even then, it's much more effective to use cash if you're having a spending problem, because cash is more physical and tangible. And that's really the approach you should take, is if you have debt, that's when you might use your debit card. But even then, going with cash is a far better alternative because you're psychologically and emotionally more tied to cash than you are on a piece of plastic. Anyways, thanks again for joining me. Enjoy the rest of the week ahead, and I will see you in the next video.